Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm pumped for this one.
Yeah, this is gonna be interesting.
We're diving deep into, well, where boxing meets celebrity hype,
Yep.
And it all boils down to this question. What's actually real amidst all the spectacle?
It's a good question.
See, at the center of this whole thing, we've got two figures, right? Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. And I gotta say, their backgrounds,
Couldn't be more different, right?
yeah, totally different worlds. So you've got Tyson, the legend, right? Undisputed heavyweight champion at just 20 years old.
Wow.
This is a man who's faced some serious demons, and you can tell he carries that with him. And on the other side, you've got Jake Paul, 27 years old, internet personality turned boxer.
Who would have thought?
Right. Known more for his viral videos and merchandise than actual knockout power, at least initially.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fascinating clash, really. It's not just personalities, it's like generations colliding.
Mhm.
Tyson, at 58, represents that old school boxing, that raw, gritty era. The sources we've got, they describe him with true scars, a hint of real menace, and, a knockout record that's just brutal.
Yeah, Paul.
Paul, he's described as having the face of an influencer, focused on that Lux life. His fame, it's built entirely in that digital world.
It really is like watching two totally different worlds collide.
It is.
And, it makes me wonder, what does this whole event, this fight, what does it actually tell us about us?
Yeah.
Are we as a culture just drawn to that polished influencer persona? Or do we still, like deep down, crave that raw authenticity of someone like Tyson?
It's a great question. And I think the sources we've got, they hint at this tension that's there between authenticity and like manufactured fame. When you actually dig into the details of the fight itself, it gets even more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this fight went down in Jerry Jones's Sun Palace down in Texas. And it was marketed as this big money-making spectacle
Which, I mean, we see a lot of these days, right?
all the time. But here's the thing. Multiple state athletic commissions, they straight up refused to sanction it as a pro fight.
Whoa, really?
Yep. They wouldn't touch it.
So is it even a real fight then? Like, are we talking entertainment, pure and simple?
Right. It makes you wonder. And then the sources mention Paul wearing, get this, diamond-encrusted shorts
Come on.
worth $1 million. $1 million. I mean, does that scream serious athletic competition to you?
Not exactly, Doc.
Exactly. It just highlights how spectacle and hype, they often overshadow genuine skill.
So are you saying the organizers, like, were they trying so hard to sell this as a legitimate fight that they accidentally revealed it wasn't?
It's possible, right? I mean,
Oh.
you gotta wonder.
I bet that was frustrating for some boxing purists, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely. Especially since the undercard, that's where the real boxing was happening. They had the WBC welterweight championship fight, Mario Barrios versus Abel Ramos, ended in a draw, pretty intense. And then there was the women's rematch, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, just a brutal, bloody battle.
Those are the fights with real titles, real stakes on the line.
You said it. Those were the ones to watch in terms of pure athletic competition.
And yet, it's the Paul Tyson fight that gets the buzz, the headlines, the money.
That's the world we live in.
It really is.
Yeah.
So it brings us back to that question, right? What draws us to these spectacles, even when, let's be honest, they might lack the substance of true competition? Like, what was it about this matchup, Paul versus Tyson, that captured everyone's imagination?
Well, I think part of it, right, it's that clash of personalities. You've got the generational gap. You've got that classic David versus Goliath narrative that always pulls people in.
Right, right.
But there's also this undercurrent of authenticity, or the lack thereof, that we keep coming back to.
Yeah, we can't escape that, can we?
It's everywhere.
So even if the fight itself, the athletic merit, let's say, was questionable, the lead-up, that was pure drama.
Yeah.
I mean, the sources mention that moment at the weigh-in where Tyson slaps Paul after Paul steps on his foot.
Oh, that was everywhere online instantly.
Instant viral moment. And it left everyone wondering, was it staged? Was that a genuine Tyson reaction?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. Whether intentional or not, it just added fuel to the fire.
Totally. I mean, you've got Tyson, even at 58, described as this imposing figure formed by tectonic plates, they said, throwing punches with bad intentions. He only landed 18 punches out of 97, but man, those few that connected, they were impactful.
That's what's so fascinating about guys like Tyson. They age, yeah, but they still have that aura, that power, that danger. It's like a mix of fear and respect, and that's just not something someone like Paul, with his internet fame and carefully curated image, can replicate.
Makes you think, though, doesn't it? Is that what we value more now? The perfectly curated image, the online persona, more than that raw authenticity.
That's a great point. And honestly, that might be the real question at the heart of this whole deep dive. In a world where everything's influencers and manufactured stories, are we losing sight of what's actually authentic?
All right, let's unpack that a bit further. What are some of the things, the factors that might be pushing us towards this spectacle over substance? I mean, social media, right? It's got to be a huge part of this whole thing. We're just bombarded with images and stories constantly. It's hard to know what's real anymore.
No kidding. And the algorithm's right. They just feed that whatever is shocking, whatever gets a reaction, that's what they push.
So we're basically being trained to value going viral over actual substance.
Kind of, yeah. And this whole Paul Tyson fight, it just slots right into
It's
that.
tailor-made for the internet.
Totally. And the sources even point out how some states, they wouldn't even allow betting on the fight, basically saying this isn't a real sporting event.
Wow, that's a statement.
Right. It speaks volumes. It's almost like the organizers wanted to have it both ways. Attract the hardcore fans by marketing it as this big boxing event, but then also play up the spectacle, the celebrity angle to reach a wider audience.
So you're saying it was more about the business of entertainment than the sport of boxing itself?
There's a strong argument for that, yeah. And to be fair, this isn't exactly a new thing. Boxing, it's always had a flair for the dramatic, building up those narratives and rivalries, you know.
To sell tickets, of course.
Exactly. But there's a line, right, between promoting a fight and just manufacturing a spectacle that's more about entertainment than actual competition.
And with this fight, it feels like they crossed that line.
Yeah, it does make you think, are we all just becoming more and more comfortable with this blurring of the lines? Are we willing to just sacrifice authenticity for pure entertainment value?
And honestly, this isn't just about boxing, right? Look at reality TV, look at influencers, even politics.
It's everywhere. It's like we're living in this world where image is king and the substance, the reality, that takes a back seat.
So how do we navigate this? How do we even start to develop like a discerning eye? Something to cut through all the noise and figure out what's real.
It's tough, but I think it starts with critical thinking. We have to be willing to question what we see, what we hear, not just take it at face value, you know?
Don't just accept the narrative that's being fed to you.
Right. Dig a little deeper, look beyond the surface. It's like those diamond-encrusted shorts, remember? $1 million. It's almost a perfect symbol for this whole thing.
Oh, totally. Like a walking billboard saying, look at me, look how flashy I am.
Exactly. It's all about the spectacle.
And then, with that in mind, that moment at the weigh-in where Tyson just pops him, it becomes even more interesting.
Oh, for sure. It adds another layer to the whole thing. Was he genuinely provoked, or was it just part of the show?
Hard to say. But it definitely highlights that tension between these two worlds. You know, you've got Tyson, that raw authenticity, and then you've got Paul representing that manufactured celebrity.
Totally different sides of the same coin.
And it makes you wonder about Tyson's motivations, right? Like, why even do this whole thing? The sources describe him as still physically imposing, formed by tectonic plates.
They weren't kidding.
But he's also 58 years old. He's had his struggles, admitted to using cannabis before fights. So why step back into the ring with someone like Jake Paul, who, let's be honest, is nowhere near his level in terms of boxing experience?
Good question. Maybe it was the money. Maybe he wanted to remind everyone of his legacy, you know, show he's still got it.
Or maybe he just wanted that spotlight again.
Could be. Or, this is interesting, maybe he saw it as a chance to, like, expose the hollowness of this whole new wave of celebrity boxing. Almost like a statement, you know?
It's almost like he's in on the joke. He's playing a character in this whole spectacle, aware of the hype, the absurdity of it all, but using it to his advantage.
That's really insightful. I like that. And it makes you think we're all playing roles to some extent, even someone like Mike Tyson.
So if even the fighters are playing characters in this whole elaborate thing, how do we, as viewers, how do we even make sense of it all?
It's a challenge, for sure. I think it comes back to that critical thinking we were talking about. We got to be aware of the forces at play, the motivations behind the scenes, the lines between entertainment and reality. They're getting blurrier and blurrier.
And maybe it's about understanding that it's not always black and white, you know?
Yeah.
Authentic versus manufactured, it's more of a spectrum.
Exactly. There can be elements of both. The key is to be aware, to ask the questions, to engage with what we're seeing, what we're consuming in a critical way.
So if we all start becoming more discerning, you know, as consumers of all this media and entertainment, does that change the game? Does it force the creators of these spectacles to up their game, to offer something more real, more substantial?
That's the hope, right? That by being more critical, more aware, We can push for a culture that values both.
Yeah.
The entertainment, yeah, but also the authenticity.
And maybe that's the real legacy of this whole Paul Tyson fight. Not about who won or lost, but about the conversations it started, the questions it made us ask. About our own relationship with the celebrity, with spectacle, with what's real in a world that's increasingly artificial.
Well said. I think you nailed it with that one.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the buildup, the hype, the context. But let's get down to brass tacks. What actually happened when those two stepped into the ring? Was it all smoke and mirrors, or were there moments of real, genuine athleticism?
All right, so let's break down the actual fight, what went down in the ring. From what I've gathered, it sounds like the fight itself was kind of, well, anticlimactic after all that hype.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens, right? The fight almost becomes secondary to the whole spectacle surrounding it.
So, for those who tuned in expecting this classic boxing match, they were probably a little disappointed.
Probably, yeah. It wasn't exactly a thriller.
So walk us through it. What actually happened? Well, like you'd expect, Tyson, even at 58, he was relying on that power, those big punches. The sources describe him moving with this, hint of real menace. You could still see that intimidation factor.
But age catches up to everyone.
Right. It does. He wasn't as mobile as he used to be, threw fewer punches overall. And Paul, he was more agile, moving around a lot, trying to keep Tyson at a distance.
So more of a speed versus power dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. Paul threw a lot more punches, but they lacked that oomph, He was relying more on athleticism than pure boxing skill.
So did either of them, gain a clear advantage?
Not really. The fight went the full 8 rounds, and neither guy could land a knockout blow. There were a few exciting moments, some flurries here and there, but overall pretty evenly matched.
And what was the final outcome?
The judges scored it a draw.
A draw.
A draw, which honestly kind of feels fitting, right? Even the result is ambiguous, just like the whole event.
Even in the ring, they couldn't escape that blurred line between substance and spectacle.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to that big question, right? What does this whole thing, this fight, this spectacle tell us about ourselves, about what we value?
Are we so desperate for entertainment that we're willing to just overlook a lack of genuine competition? Are we more caught up in the hype than the actual sport?
Tough questions, man. No easy answers. But I do think we need to at least be aware of what's happening, Be critical about what we're buying into, literally and figuratively.
One thing that stood out to me, the sources mentioned that even though Tyson didn't land a ton of punches, the ones that connected, they really connected.
Oh yeah, he's still got it.
Makes you think about the staying power of a guy like him. Even past his prime, he commands attention.
Yeah.
There's that fear, that respect that just lingers.
It's that authenticity, right? Even in a world where it's all about image, there's still something about the real deal that draws us in.
I think that's why, despite the hype, the spectacle, figures like Tyson still have that hold on us. They represent a time when things felt simpler, when boxing was about skill and grit, not likes and followers.
It's a good reminder that even in this increasingly artificial world, there's still value in the real, the raw, the imperfections that make us human.
So as we wrap this up, what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they go about their day?
I think it boils down to choice. We can choose to just passively consume whatever spectacle is put in front of us, or we can choose to engage with it critically, to ask questions, to demand something more.
To value substance over spectacle, authenticity over artifice.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us make that choice, we can start to shift the culture a little bit, create a world where entertainment and substance can actually coexist, where the hype doesn't drown out what's real.
If a fight happens in a stadium full of hype but lacks real competition, does it even make a sound? Or is the sound we're hearing just the echo of our own desire to be entertained no matter the cost? That's something to chew on, right? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring these ideas and let us know what you think. Hit us up on our website or social media. We love hearing from you.